Ed Freifogel. How on earth can I introduce you? For newbies to the GIS, geospatial, etc. scene in London, you run a fantastic service, GeoMob. The best way to meet others, and the main thing is, yes, of course, you get a bunch of people up on stage, you have everyone do interesting presentations, but ultimately we're all funneled into a pub with free beer. So Ed, that's how I know you. Is there anything else that I should say in terms of introductory words?
No, I mean, just, that I'm founder of OpenCage, or co-founder, I guess we could say. I am only co-founder, so that would be it. But I mean, GeoMob, we can talk about GeoMob as well if you want. GeoMob is more like the side hobby project. So
okay, well, how about we get through the usual business examination agenda and see.
Okay, you start. We follow whatever you want to, whichever direction you want to go.
Cool. All right. So you mentioned OpenCage. What's the elevator pitch?
Right. So OpenCage, we provide geocoding. So a geocoding API based on open data. That's probably our main differentiator. And so it's a highly robust, highly available API, covers the whole world, and we do that at a highly affordable price. So okay. That's the value proposition. There are lots of different geocoding services, but I think some of the attributes of ours make it unique.
So I was having a look on your pricing page, and it looked like Google, one competitor you singled out, was of the order of $1,000 versus yours at $50. So I guess others might be TomTom here. Are they of a similar sort of price as Google?
Yeah, it's hard to know because a lot of them don't make their pricing specifically public, particularly at higher volumes. So that's one difference, is that we try to be very transparent. But yes, we are orders of magnitude more affordable, and that's because we're using open data. And so all of those services you mentioned, Google here, TomTom, they're all technically excellent, of course. The issue is they have some major drawbacks, and the drawbacks are you have to obey their terms and conditions, which can be quite restrictive, particularly around things like saving the data. How long can you save it? And they're typically very, very both expensive, but also very restrictive terms of business in terms of you have to sign up for a long-term contract and things like that. So the whole way that this business came about, OpenCage, is because I previously had a different business where we needed a lot of geocoding. And I got so fed up with Google's offering and their ways they treated their customers. So then we said, probably we can do this better. And so that's what we do.
So when was that? When did you start?
Well, the OpenCage project initially started, the geocoding specific, it started in about 2014. So this summer, we've been going for 10 years. Initially, it was a project within my prior business. Yeah. And then in 2015, we sold that business. And the buyer of that business was not interested in the geocoding piece. They kind of had a different strategy. And so myself and one of my colleagues at the prior business, Mark Tobias Metten, we took that over. And initially it had a few customers at that time. And we thought, okay, let's run this kind of as a side project and see how it goes. And slowly but steadily, it's been growing ever since. So
great. Amazing. So would it be correct if I said that your niche is solely geocoding, or is your niche otherwise defined?
No, that's it. Only geocoding. We do now also offer another service which we call GeoSearch, which is very similar to geocoding, but basically just geocoding. We don't do maps, we don't do routing, we don't do any of those other things. We do only geocoding.
Okay, so the competitors we've talked about so far do many things beyond geocoding. Are there any other competitors that solely do geocoding?
I mean, yes, I'm aware of a few. Typically, there are some that are experts only in one or two countries. They focus only on a few markets. So I think one thing that makes us unique is we are worldwide. And again, that's possible because we're relying on open data. The biggest data source by far is OpenStreetMap. So we try to be very active in the OpenStreetMap community. Very long time contributors to OpenStreetMap, and that's kind of what we build on. Yeah.
The impression I'm getting is that you, in fact, dominate the niche of open data-based geocoding.
don't know. I don't know that we dominate much of anything, but we do provide a very good geocoding service if you want to use open data. Yes, that's entirely what we focus on.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Could you tell us a bit about the skin in the game of the owners, management, and staff? How do you basically make sure that everybody is incentivized and there's a proper alignment?
Yeah, so it's myself and my colleague who are the two co-founders, and we are the sole owners of the business. There are no investors or anything like that. It's a privately held company. Actually, a bit of a journey there. Actually, we when we initially started the business, at that time we started in the UK. I was living in London at that time, and the prior business that we spun out of was a UK business, and then unfortunately Brexit meant Brexit. So we eventually moved the business to Germany, and so now for the last 5 years now we've been operating from Germany. But to get back to your question about the skin in the game and things, the motivating factor in this business, I mean, of course, we want to do well as a business, and that means running a profitable operation so it's sustainable. But the real motivating factor, I would say, is helping people, helping spread open data, and what we believe is there are people out there who want to just contribute open data. There's a very active OpenStreetMap community and people who enjoy the act of mapping and things like that. But that's a very, very tiny segment of the population. And what we see is that if people are using the data and depending on the data, then all of a sudden they care when there are problems in the data, when things are missing, when the world changes and things need to be updated. And so then they kind of have that aha moment. I mean, this is also a major difference between our service and something like Google. Very often customers, particularly new customers, will say like, oh, this address is missing. And I'll say, great, you can add it. Here's how. We send them a tutorial and we explain how it works. And people have their mind blown because they're used to just, if you use Google or something, you basically just hope Google gets around to fixing it, right?
And it's months away.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And so yeah, that's kind of a big motivating factor in the business is the education factor.
Yeah, I really like it too. I mean, an early example was OSRM, OpenStreetMap routing machine, I think.
There was an OpenStreetMap what?
OpenStreetMap routing machine, OSRM, I think it was called, and that was you could get turn-by-turn directions based on OSM data. And
there are several different routing, open source routing engines built around OpenStreetMap.
Yeah, so that wasn't, because it did seem in a way that OpenStreetMap was this, like, I don't want to use the word black hole, because you could see the results of your edits immediately in the map on the web. But to have services like yours or some sort of routing engine actually making use of the data to do with our everyday lives does make everybody's volunteer efforts more meaningful. So
that's what we aim for. I mean, that's a big motivation, I would say, for all of us. So.
Yeah, great. Okay, so who's your ideal customer, and how do you ensure always working backwards from their needs?
Well, I guess our ideal customer is someone who needs a lot of geocoding.
So who are
they? Right. So that falls into several different categories. I mean, first of all, we should explain that there are different kinds of geocoding. There's forward geocoding, which is you have an address, let's say, or a place name, and you want to know where that is. So converting that into coordinates, or other types of geographic information. Maybe you want the boundaries, the bounding box, this kind of things. And then reverse geocoding, which is the opposite. You have geographic coordinates, and you want to know where that is in the way that a human can understand. So maybe the address, or and there are different categories of companies that have a lot of geocoding needs. So this could be you have companies that are processing lots of different addresses. Or on the reverse geocoding side, it's people typically who have tracking devices. So if you have a fleet of vehicles they're being tracked, or cargo containers or things like that, or also even phones. I mean, now we're all carrying around kind of a tracking device all the time. And I guess that is one mega trend, is that the cost of these tracking devices, they keep getting cheaper, better battery life, more robust, different connectivity methods. So more and more things get tracked. But it is interesting that there are many different types of geocoding, and even now after 10 years, I still get surprised sometimes by what customers want and their use cases and why they need geocoding.
I was going to say, I guess we talked about a typical need, which is that there are as few gaps as possible, or that it is as up to date as possible. So beyond those two basic customer needs, are there any more unique ones, I don't know, to do with a pizza delivery company or a bike hire company, or?
Well, I mean, some people, yeah, so let me give you an example. One of our customers, for example, is a photo sharing site. Okay. And so people take the picture, and then you can upload them to their photo management tool. And if you take the picture with your phone, the phone could record the coordinates of that picture. Okay, so then in the photo management tool, they want to turn that into a location description so that the person can, see exactly where that was. But this was different than you might think. If, for example, they don't want to have the precise address, because that, it could create some privacy issue. But second of all, like, think of the example where you take a picture of the Eiffel Tower, right? You don't want to know that. You want to say Eiffel Tower, Paris, France, right? You don't want to have, 127 Rue, whatever, whatever that street name is, right? So we actually built a system for them around points of interest and that type of thing. So, but that's what I mean, is that so for example, attributes like, for example, I really care about having the absolute freshest data. Like, that customer does not care about having the freshest data.
Alcatel's been around for 100 years.
Yeah. So, or they don't, some people care a lot about different boundaries, like figuring out, is this point within a certain jurisdiction or not? But we also have customers where from a geospatial perspective, you might shake your head at how simple it is. But let me give you an example. We might work with, say, a rental car company that has a kind of tracking device on the vehicle, and they just want to know, did the car leave the country or not?
Interesting.
Okay, so
it's quite coarse geocoding.
Exactly. So quite coarse geocoding. And you have all kinds of different things. I mean, you have things where people, they give us an address and they don't really want to know the exact geographic coordinates. They maybe want to know what time zone is it in, for example, or they want to know another category. So there are many, many different codes that have encoding schemes that are used. So, for example, in the EU, the EU has created these statistical divisions called NUTS codes. I think it's the National Unit of Territorial. I forget exactly what it stands for, but essentially, basically, EU countries are divided into different NUTS territories. Okay, and many academics, they want to do data analysis whereby you have an address and you want to convert that into the NUTS code.
They want to aggregate.
Okay, and so then they can aggregate on the NUTS code, for example.
Okay.
I know. I mean, it's just
that's a great introduction.
There's so many weird, all these different kinds of codes that people use in different industries and things. Or let me give you another example. In the United States, the typical address format is you have the street and the house number, street, 123 Main Street, and then the city and the state abbreviation, and possibly a zip code or a postal code. But what you don't have typically in the address is the county. Okay. So some customers are like, I have an address. I want to know which county it's in. Okay. For example.
So you have to have some backend processing to get the
So
polygons.
what we have to do is geocode the address, get the longitude and latitude, and then look up
intersect that. Yeah.
Look up which county that latitude is in. So anyway, the point of all this is that there are really a lot of different use cases, which is one thing that a lot of people don't appreciate. And particularly people come to our site and they'll try something and be like, oh, this is it's not doing the thing I want. I mean, some of the comments are just so funny because people are like, this is broken, it's not working. And then you're like, what are you trying to do? And they're like, of course I'm trying to do this, this unique way of doing it, as everyone would be. And you're like, people have no clue. So
I mean, there's so many extra questions here. It seems like some of the issues you have are you're almost a victim of being a global service. And the next inevitable question there is, what about multi-language support? Do you have Korean users?
So yes. So you are right. I mean, the fundamental challenge that we face is that humans have divided the world in insane ways. That with all sorts of historic anomalies and weirdness, and of course duplicate names and all these kinds of things. And one challenge that we do face is very often software developers who are building an international project, they just assume the world works the way that their home country works, and that is so. I mean, usually everything is different from country to country. And then they get angry when we return the data and they're like, well, why is this postcode not the way I expect? How can you possibly have a postcode that's not just numeric?
I'm fascinated now.
Well, how can you do that? How can you do that, Will? Anyway, but yes. So the world is a very, very, very diverse place.
It's
nevertheless, the good news is. The OpenStreetMap, for example, is an amazing project. I mean, sure. With its global footprint. I mean, I'm not aware of any other project like this where the entire world is contributing to one database, right? Yeah. And you could say something like Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is not really the same, because you have an English Wikipedia, a German Wikipedia, right. A Korean Wikipedia. Okay, so. And here, everything is going in, and people put things in their language. And of course, people can. You can query our service in whichever language you want, and then we try to find a match, and do the best we can given the data that we have. So,
goodness, it's fascinating. I mean, I feel like there's a whole episode here just to nerd out about the different types of addresses and formats, and it's almost like. Is it the case? Because in Australia, where I'm from, it sounds similar to the US.
Australia has its own bit of weirdness.
Tell me.
Well, okay. So, first of all, you have some things that are territories and some things that are not.
Yeah, we have territories.
You have things like the Jervis Bay territory.
Yes, I was going to mention
right?
that.
Okay,
so Canberra has its own beach.
No one is clearly clear. What is it? Is it part of ACT or not? Is it? And the Jervis Bay Territory, for example, most of Australia has a second level ISO code. The Jervis Bay Territory does not have a second level ISO code. Okay,
I don't know what a second level ISO code is.
Well, so the ISO code for the 2-letter ISO code for Australia is AU. And then you have AU dash WA would be Western Australia.
Yep.
But then so exactly. So then software developer makes the assumption all of Australia has 2-level ISO codes. And I can tell you, Will, the Jervis Bay Territory does not have a second level ISO code.
And there's these 3 square kilometers that.
Okay, so now we haven't even gotten into things like Christmas Island. Was it the Heard and McDonald's Islands and stuff. So, I mean, one reason I do love this job is I get to learn a lot about geography, and I get to learn all of these crazy edge cases. And actually, for the benefit of anyone listening, we are quite active on Mastodon on our company account. And usually once a week or so, we do a thread of what we call geo weirdness, where we pick a country. So that's how I know all these Australia things, because we pick a country and we list off all the geographically weird things about that country.
You're the first person. This is a real sign of you running this company. You're the first person that's ever been. I'll just spontaneously mention Java's Bay territory to me.
Well,
I'm used to being the one that knows about that and no one else that could. Okay, so
so
but I guess what I was trying to get at is that, I don't know how many countries there are. Say there's 180. Are there 50 address formats between those 180 countries?
there are definitely more than 180 countries, but this gets into the next question. Well, what is a country?
Oh God.
Okay, so
Okay.
but yeah, yes, and actually, Will, okay, look.
But you're right.
I don't
It
like to
does
boast.
vary
Well,
depending on which country.
I didn't intend to come on this podcast to start bragging,
And,
but I so we had exactly that question arises of what we have this data in OpenStreetMap and now we need to format it ideally in the format that that country is used to, people in that country are used to, and this is something for example, that a lot of services do quite badly. I mean, I'm sure you're very familiar with, American services that, basically force everything into an American format. So if you go on LinkedIn right now, it will say that I am based in Berlin, Germany, which is technically true because, well, I'm in Berlin, Germany. Berlin is a city and it's also a state.
right.
Okay. And in America, of course, the address formats are city, state, country. But I can tell you, no German person says they live in Berlin, Berlin. Okay, like it's like a huge red flag that this
You're
service
not
was
from
not
around there.
actually
Right.
exactly. So, and there are so many different permutations of it's like do they write the state? Do they use some sort of abbreviation? Do they? I mean, some countries have different sub levels. How do they do the postcode? Is the street number
Right.
first or left? Okay, so we actually built we compiled a set of templates that we've now open sourced. So this project is called Address Formatting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a set of templates
There we go.
for every
That's what I
single
was thinking.
country with hundreds of tests, and the templates are kind of programming language agnostic. So we have a software that uses these templates, but now other people have also built software that use these templates in different programming languages. I think there are now 10 different programming
Yeah.
languages or so that use this, and people regularly contribute fixes and test cases and things like that. So
Fantastic. Right. But this is exactly the weeds. The level of the weeds I
well,
wanted to get down into.
I can
We're
tell
getting
you,
into the roots of the weeds here.
well, there are a lot of weeds in geocoding.
This is
I
great.
spend my time in the weeds.
I
Yes.
love it. I love it. I can't help myself. I've got another question. So, is there some sort of evidence of like prior colonization, if you like, and the colonizing country's address format is evident there? Like you could even go back as far as the Romans. Like I don't know how the Romans formatted their addresses, but I want to get too extreme
I don't
there.
know that
But
they particularly had addresses because obviously the innovation
right.
is primarily around postal delivery. But
I'm sure they had some sort of poster, but anyway,
I
yeah,
don't.
I think you understand what I mean.
Well, I don't know about evidence of colonization, but you do have different countries that use the postal systems of other countries and things like that. Again, you get into a lot of weird edge cases where you start to ask yourself, what is a country or not? So, as an example, in the Isle of Man uses the UK postal system. The Isle of Man is not part of the UK.
Right.
Okay. So, but then we have to deal with that because many people do assume that the Isle of Man is part of the UK. And so we might get input where people say Isle of Man, UK, and so you have to deal with these kind of strange edge cases. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I guess the theme there is edge cases, and that you, as running this business, are sensitive in your customer enrollment process to the possibility of those edge cases.
Yeah, I mean, by the biggest problem we face is the data on two sides. I mean, one, a lot of customers have just absolutely terrible data, and so they don't. I mean, they just have garbage, and as you've heard, garbage in is going to lead to garbage out. So that's one struggle. I mean, of course, we do many things to try to clean the data up and help them, but it's every time we think we have it solved, I mean, you literally see people will send us addresses that are mixed English and Arabic.
Wow.
Arabic, by the way, is a right and left script. So you can imagine this is complex. Okay. So that is one data challenge. The other data challenge is, of course, on the other side with the databases that we're searching through, like OpenStreetMap, immensely powerful because of the crowdsourced nature of it. But because that data is also typically being entered by humans also make mistakes on that side. Okay, and so you have all kinds of weirdness in OpenStreetMap, and people make mistakes, and the software they're using makes mistakes, or so yeah, it's complex. It's complex.
I mean, God, I don't think I've ever spent so much time on any one question in an episode, but it just speaks to how complex the world is and how fascinating it is. I mean, I was an expat in the Middle East for 6.5 years, and God, combined English Arabic addresses. I remember that happening all the time, but I also remember the addressing system at all, the gazetteer, if you like, for the country. Sure, it probably existed at one point. There was probably some massive government investment, 20 years ago in the case of Kuwait or something. I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in particular, but it's as though the population, which is mostly expat, sort of has their own addressing system and way of talking about places. And a lot of the time it's just, here's the WhatsApp pin for where I am. And hardly anybody even tries to understand, Arabic and to speak in, So there's that layer as well of complexity and how the different populations within a country talk about where they are and achieve the geocoding, if you like, just informally. God, there's so much.
But that's not particularly unique. I mean, many countries don't have or don't use formal addressing systems. They use much more landmark-based system.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure if you're familiar, if you've ever come across the Nicaraguan addressing system, which is generally conceded to be the most complex, in that it's, I guess, in the main, I have not been to Nicaragua, but it's particularly around the capital. The capital is located on a big lake, and the addresses are given like towards the lake or away from the lake.
Interesting.
Like this kind of, like, literally, you go to this crossing and then 300 meters towards the lake.
Interesting.
That kind of thing. So we had a guy one time who spoke at GeoMob who was from Nicaragua and was trying to build a parser to understand this and to deal with this complexity. But I don't know if that project is still active or not. But,
but I guess, we are dwelling a bit, but just to flag one more thing about landmarks. So my master's thesis was actually about spatial cognition or human navigation performance and what fosters the best performance. And it turns out it's a combination of one's sense of direction and also knowledge of landmarks. And the person with the most reliable means of getting from one place to another deploys both a sense of direction and this knowledge of a series of turns or directions between landmarks. Anyway, so it's that research basically revealed a problem with most mapping or navigation services, that they're all just turn-by-turn directions with meters between them, not go to this well-known landmark, the Eiffel Tower, and turn right, for example. So it just made me think that given that one of your customer needs was based around landmarks rather than just, the actual street number of the Eiffel Tower, the effort that you had to go through to achieve, an adequate or robust landmark-based sort of geocoder might have meant that there were more landmarks that were put into OpenStreetMap, and that could then form the basis for better turn-by-turn directions. Is there any?
Yeah, the problem in OpenStreetMap, I would say, is actually, it's not that the landmarks aren't in there. It's how do you know which landmark is important?
Yeah.
That's that's at this stage, it varies.
7-Eleven under the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, exactly. It varies from region to region, but at this stage, the biggest problem with OpenStreetMap is almost too much data rather than not enough data.
Okay.
Because then you have to figure out which data is important and which is gratuitous, and that's very hard to know.
And presently,
you
there's
know.
no rating system. There's no sort of
No, not really. I mean, imagine you see like there's a statue or something, right? You know, there might be a statue on every corner, but it's just one happens to be, or let's say, you know, in a town there are 100 churches. Probably there are 2 or 3 that are very significant and well known, and then there are, you know, 95 that are just everyday churches.
Okay,
So
I thought I had disposed of this topic, but now I have to. There's another the next question. So, and this came up
just
in.
to be clear, Will, we're not going to
So,
solve this in this call.
okay, well, so if you had a user profile and you had a brief sort of summary of the person's preferences, their religion, the language they spoke,
Yeah.
which type of supermarket they prefer to go to, that might surface some landmark, a set of landmarks versus another set for another person. Anyway.
I guess in theory could. We don't. I mean, we don't have profiles of the. I mean, that would be something one of our customers could build in the sense that like we don't interact with their users.
Okay. All right. We've gone past
anonymous. Yeah, we don't want to know who is searching, and that, by the way, is also an attribute that some customers are quite keen on, and the sort of privacy, data protection type thing. I mean, the whole reason we moved the business to Germany was also GDPR. Lots of European customers don't want their data to leave the EU. They don't necessarily want to give their data to someone like Google, for example.
Okay.
So,
speaking of working backwards from customer needs. All right. Okay. So then, how fast and sticky is growth?
Well, I speaking as the company owner, I can tell you it's not fast enough. It is a challenge to sell geocoding, I will tell you, because for the main reason that you either need geocoding or you don't. Okay, like if you don't need it, I cannot sell it to you, Will. Like it doesn't matter, you know, how much you like me or how drunk I get you, or you know, you're not going to buy geocoding from me. So, but the flip side of that is if you do need geocoding, by definition, you already have a solution of some type. So, you know, you may like your solution or you may dislike your solution, but it's typically not trivial to switch. So I need to catch you on the day either that a new project starts. Okay, so then you're ready to start from a green field, or for whatever reason upset with your current geocoding solution because of, you know, the product or because of the price or whatever, and then you say, okay, and now it's worth the effort to switch.
Okay.
And so as a result, it's a challenge to market and to get to people exactly at that moment. The good news about this is that once people have switched and they're using our service, they typically stay. They don't, you know, as long as the service is working for them, they stay, because we try to treat our customers quite well. The price is very reasonable. Hopefully the service, you know, obviously the service needs to work and meet their needs. Otherwise they're not gonna stay. But assuming it is meeting their needs, there's no reason for them to switch away.
Yep. Okay.
So
I think we've already definitely begun to discuss at least why geocoding is hard. Do you have any more comments to round off this topic?
I mean, every day it's a new thing that makes it hard, I gotta say. I mean, it feels like, honestly, even 10 years in, you come up with new edge cases and new, but the fundamental challenge, as I said, is the world is a complex place. The customers have bad data. The data that we have to represent the world is by definition flawed. I mean, the world is changing continually. So, you know, even as we're speaking here, someone has built a new house and created a new address, and you know, so there's going to be some lag before that building is in OpenStreetMap. And so, you know, it's like the old saying, every map of the world is wrong, like by definition, because the world has changed by the time the map is created. So these are the things that make it hard.
I just have so many questions here. So, God, so as soon as there's any territorial conflict, so for example, I mean, and I have a little bit of hesitation even getting into this because it's going to sound like I'm talking about politics or supporting one entity over another.
Yeah,
so for what it's worth, right.
Yeah,
so for example, when Russia took Crimea, I presume geocoders had to change something. So what did you do, if anything?
Well, this is the reason I got into it, was because now I just decide. I decide. No, of course that's not how it works. And there is we follow the same rules of OpenStreetMap, and there is OpenStreetMap has a whole policy on disputed territories and how disputed territories are handled. And I mean, in some ways, that's kind of a cop out for us in that we don't want to decide; we just let them decide. The approach that OpenStreetMap takes generally, but not always, is what they call the on-the-ground rule. So you map whatever the situation is on the ground. That's the reality. Okay. So
whatever gets the package to the front door.
Yes. However, there are situations like Ukraine where that rule is deviated from. And so, the borders of Ukraine are shown as kind of the pre-2014 borders of Ukraine. One of the ways that OpenStreetMap solves this is the OpenStreetMap database is freely available. So if you feel strongly that some border or in OpenStreetMap is wrong, you can take your own copy and make your own map.
Join the edit board. Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how it's solved. There are edit wars. There are people that intentionally change things and flip flop things around, and it's usually quite quickly corrected, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Cool. I think we've at least addressed, to pardon the pun, why geocoding is hard. I got it in there. I got a pun in.
2 points for you, Will.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. So I think we've also at least begun to discuss this. How are you making open data, particularly OpenStreetMap, usable for customers to make? We've already discussed this. It is a premier sort of example of commercializing.
Well, the main issue there, I mean, we have many customers who don't have any awareness of open data when they come to us. They come to us just because they know they need geocoding. I mean, we do have some who come to us specifically because they know us from the OpenStreetMap community and they know they want to use OpenStreetMap data and open data. But we have many who don't, and they just come because they're sick of paying super high prices to Google or whomever. And for those customers, actually, it can be an educational process, as I say, as we help them, make them aware that they can edit the data, they can fix the data, and actually that's quite rewarding when you see customers who kind of, they get it, and then all of a sudden they start correcting the data and fixing the data and really improving it. And I mean, that's the whole model of OpenStreetMap is that we all, by all of us contributing, the database gets better for everyone. So,
I mean, I'm going to sound like a real. I mean, again, I'm just going to have to say this, and who cares how it comes out? I ask it with good intentions. So, does the thought ever cross your mind, or anybody in this niche's mind, of the ideal address, and let's just be done with it and use this format and stop using all these different ones? Of course, I don't want to sound like I'm someone who has designs upon diversity.
Obviously, well, in my private life, I just use longitude, latitude, of course.
Naturally.
I assume as an intelligent person you do as well. No, I mean,
so which one?
That's not going to work. That's not going to work. I mean, there are many attempts to introduce new address formats. Some successful, some less successful.
Right.
But
like for the EU, for example, is there some sort of convergence on an EU-wide address format?
No, I'm not aware that anyone's working on that.
Interesting.
The issue is addresses serve many, many different functions. Okay, so the primary function where most addresses come from is the postal delivery system, and so they are used so that the post office can deliver mail. So this actually leads to a very common misconception. So some people are like, there are a lot of misconceptions about postcodes, for example, that postcodes are a geography, and they're not. They're absolutely not. In some countries, the postal system has assigned certain postcodes to certain areas, but usually they are postal delivery points, and sometimes they change or they get split up or old postcodes get retired or whatever. But so the point is, we have one tool, which is a tool for delivering mail, and then we have simultaneously people want to talk about locations and how we use locations, and in some countries addresses change quite a lot. Like in the US, it's very common to rename streets, like ceremonially. After some famous citizen of the town dies, a street gets renamed in his or her honor. And so then, the street has the old name, the new name, potentially also a number. Then you have all these different codes of how people want to, which typically also have different use cases and things like that. So, and there's definitely we are not moving towards a unified solution that I'm aware of. I think there are just many different use cases. Most famously now, of course, in recent years, also in the UK, is what 3 words.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of people are like, why would I need what 3 words? I have a perfectly good address. And that's not really the use case for what 3 words. One of the use cases for what 3 words is when you're in a place that doesn't have an address. You're on the beach or whatever. You're in the park. You're in the middle of the forest.
Yeah.
And
as in the majority of the surface of the Earth.
Yeah. Humans do a lot of weird things, and every one of those things, everything happens somewhere, and so humans need tools to describe where things are happening.
Oh, this brings up a lot of philosophical questions too. Maybe I can just flag things for other episodes. Because I wanted. So it sounds like you only express what is in OpenStreetMap. If we had,
we use other data sources as well.
Okay, because I was going to ask, if there was a random new country that emerged from the sea, would you wait for people to canoe over there and get their GPSs out and put it in OpenStreetMap, or would you let the new government of that new island in the middle of the Pacific tell you?
If a new country rose from the sea, I suspect it would be mapped very quickly. But the other data sources that we use typically are country specific. So some countries are quite progressive about the data they make available, open data, and others are not yet there. But for example, the UK has over the last 20 years evolved quite a bit in terms of there's a lot of open geodata. Australia, for example, has a thing called GNAF, the Geospatial National Address File or something. I don't know exactly what it stands for, but GNAF. There are projects like Open Addresses, which collects open data sets, which they might not be at the country level, they might be at the state or municipal level. There are many. There's lots of different data out there.
Okay.
And that's part of the challenge that we have, is how do we merge that data, make use of it, deduplicate it. Which data do you trust? What do we do when the data is conflicting between these different data sets, things like that.
Okay, so that's interesting to know as well, that it's not just it's open data in general. It sounds
it's open data in general. Yeah. That being said, by far OpenStreetMap is the largest.
Okay. So
and I would say the most active.
Right. Okay. So I guess that's as good of a segue as any into the next section. What is the challenge of being an infrastructure service?
Well, geocoding is very low on the totem pole of geospatial services, right? In that, it's not particularly glamorous. It's something that just kind of needs to work. And, this is one of the key insights that I've had over the last couple of years, is that our customers treat us, they think of us very much the way you think of, let's say, the electricity company, right? In that what you want is that when you press the light switch, you want your light to go on. And at the end of the month, when you get the bill, you want it to be reasonable. And other than that, you never want to hear from your electricity company. Okay. So that makes it a real challenge, because first of all, the light always needs to go on. We need to be very robust, 24/7, every day of the year, despite, the internet sometimes breaks down and there's all kinds of issues. But customers don't care; they just want it to work, and obviously we need to do that in a very affordable way so that the bill is reasonable, and we need to accept that the niche that we're in, it's a niche, and we're not. It can be a real to market it and make it known, and that we don't have shiny new features that I can promote every week or whatever. It's not very exciting if I do a blog post saying like, oh, we cleaned some more data. Like
you're not upselling people on now adding apartment numbers.
Oh, well, we do occasionally add new features, and
we now have building names
like that. But nevertheless, we just have to accept it's not. It's an essential service, but it's not necessarily the most glamorous service.
Before we finish off with a couple of general questions for all guests that come on, I've got one more specific to geocoding. What on earth do you do with a 50-story building? What do you do in terms of vertical?
What do I do with it? I mean, the 50-story building presumably has an address, I would guess.
Sure. So, but what if a user has expectations about a flat or a floor?
Well, typically, I mean, I guess it depends which country, but typically that would be, flat 317 at 123 Main Street. So we're just returning the coordinates of 123 Main Street, not.
So then, okay, sorry, I need to be more specific. What about reverse geocoding in this context? Do you offer any sort of, I don't know, a drop-down menu of the 50 apartments at that?
Oh, I see. No, we would not, because typically those are not in something like OpenStreetMap. What we do is we would typically return just the building address. What we might do is the people might have tagged all the different kind of the POIs there, like the stores and things like that. So in that case, I mean, we could return multiple results where we just say, if you search for that address, we might say, okay, there's a McDonald's, there's a, whatever, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be this gets back to user expectation. I mean, does the user want a drop down of every flat in the building or not? Or do they just want the address? Or just it's difficult to say.
Okay, so but
so we try to keep it simple as possible.
Okay, so if I sign up tomorrow or today for OpenCage, the default behavior, if I throw a coordinate pair at it and it happens to land on, I don't know, the Shard in London, which has, I don't know, presumably more than 100 floors, what is OpenCage going to give back to me?
I haven't tested that up, but I think we would say the Shard and then whatever the street address and the postcode. So, well, we give you multiple things. So we give you what we call the formatted address. So that would probably be the Shard, the 123 whatever street, and the postcode and whatever. We then also give you back structured data about that location. So we would say, okay, the country is the UK, the city is London, the borough is, where is that, Southwark or whatever.
Southwark.
So then if you need, maybe you're only interested in which borough it is, or you're only interested in the postcode or whatever, you would extract that.
So the default behavior is essentially down to the building footprint and its position on the street, and then some other jurisdictional or administrative boundary based information. And it's custom behavior that someone would have to ask for to get the contents in terms of POIs inside that building from OpenStreetMap. I guess what I'm getting to, it wasn't intentional, but what this brings up for me is the limitation of OpenStreetMap, that it's plan view, essentially. It's not really, it doesn't foster or incentivize as complete or robust of a digitization of the world vertically.
Yeah, there are projects adjacent to, or to a degree, in OpenStreetMap to do what they call indoor mapping. So imagine you have a shopping complex, or with many different levels, and you have all the pieces in there. Or I remember one time at the State of the Map, we had someone who gave a presentation about these metro stations in Tokyo. I mean, you can imagine it just completely
Bonkers.
insane. So
Shinjuku, Shibuya,
so
etc. Yep.
this is the thing. I'm obviously there are use cases where that level of insane detail would be very useful. I'm not sure our services should address that use case, in that we can't be all things for all people.
Sure.
That sounds like a highly specialized niche service, and we put a lot of time and effort into keeping our service as simple as possible and easy to use. So we probably, we're not the right tool if you need to know sub-level 3 of the subway system.
That particular sushi joint at the end of that particular corridor. Okay, all right. No, that's interesting to flag as a point of differentiation for someone who might want to do geocoding, as it were, indoors. I'm through my efforts with the Geospatial Index and awareness of those indoor mapping companies, I've just myself become more aware of this as an emergent part of our industry.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people working on indoor mapping. Of course, we've had many at GeoMap. We've had many talks about all the different approaches of how to handle it. All the way down to companies doing the inside of the grocery store to tell you where the milk is
to the shelf. Yeah.
So yeah, to the shelf. That is not a service that we're looking to offer.
All right. You're not geocoding shelves.
Currently.
Okay. All right. I'll let you off the hook. Okay. So then what, if anything, are your customers saying to you about their AI needs?
Not a lot, man. Because the thing is, I mean, obviously AI is an expansive topic that means different things to different people, but I'm going to assume what you mean is kind of the current en vogue thing of these large language models, the ChatGPT type things. The issue there is people typically turn to a geocoder when they want a deterministic correct answer. Large language models create a probabilistic answer. Okay. So I think a large language model is great when it's like, write me some text, or create a poem or something where there is not necessarily a clear correct answer. It's not clear to me that that's something people want from their geocoder.
Well, I love that as a critique, actually, of the hype around AI, and that's actually basically the point of this question, that we have a bunch of industry experts who actually have to get money out of customers, so they need to provide the right thing. So in that context, I appreciate the
we have not fielded a lot of requests there. Nevertheless, where the thing that does get interesting, of course, is one of the things it seems large language models are very good at is, if you give it very clear instructions for kind of reformatting data, there it can be quite useful. So there might be use cases around there where you could, not using it to do the geocoding, but to reformat the geocoding, or to maybe things like that. I could imagine there would be use cases. So, yeah.
All right. No, I appreciate these insights from an insider. Okay, so last of all, if you were to hire an apprentice, what qualities would get them the job?
Well, I mean, our interview process, first of all, is basically, 2-3 hours of live geocoding, where I just quiz them on
how many coordinate pairs
the capitals of different countries and things like that.
Your insensitivity.
No, I mean, to be very upfront with you, I guess we have a couple different needs. I mean, first of all, you would need to be very comfortable working with data, lots of data, of all different types and formats, and processing data, playing with data, massive data sets.
Not big data, massive data.
Yeah, I guess empathy in terms of dealing with the customers. A lot of our customers, we have some customers who are geospatial experts. We have a lot of customers who are not geospatial experts, and that they're just basic, software development. They have a technical background, but not a geospatial background, and so they often don't know what to ask for or how to describe what it is actually they need, or and also, frankly, our customer base is worldwide. So many people, they're not, we're interacting with them in their second language, so it's a challenge for them
Right.
to, adequately formulate their questions. And so you need a lot of empathy and trying to help them understand what it is they actually need, and guiding them kind of like, are we the right tool to use for the project or not? Or if not, why not? And if so, what are the steps they need to take? So, I mean, a lot of what we do is just, writing the documentation, writing the tutorials and things like that, and trying to put ourselves into the position of someone new to geospatial. I mean, the a very, very typical customer case is someone, the boss is like, oh, here, someone gave me this spreadsheet of 300,000 addresses. Find the coordinates. And by the way, the spreadsheet is total garbage, and and this person has no experience with this at all. So,
Patience sounds like.
so patience, empathy, helping guide the customer to the solution. These are the kind of things. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
usual story, someone with emotional capital to get through the frustrations.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What a survey. I would never have thought that I could spend, as I said before, 20 plus minutes just on one question. Inevitably, I guess, about all the different address formats that humans have come up with in the 180 plus countries around the world. Ed, it was an amazing survey. Thanks.
It was my pleasure. If anyone, needs help with geocoding, please get in touch. And if you just like geospatial stuff, then, as I said, follow us on Mastodon, and we often nerd out about all kinds of geo weirdness and things like that. So
Awesome. Can you also give a quick plug about GeoMob and what it is?
all right, of course. So for about the last 15 years or so, I've been running an event in London called GeoMob, where usually once a quarter or so we meet up and we have 3, 4, 5 different talks of people about any kind of project related to geospatial. Very broad mix. It could be startups, could be academics, could be people from the OpenStreetMap community, could be people from big companies or whatever. And they give their talks, and then we go discuss the talks over beers, and that's it. So it's very informal. And now, so for the first 10 years or so, it was only in London, and then I moved away from London, and now we've started doing it in other cities. We have it in I don't know, 6 or 7 different cities around Europe. I don't organize all of them now. The other people organize some of them, but it's a lot of fun if you're into geospatial stuff, which if you're not, I don't know why you listen to this far into the podcast, frankly. But
was there
speaking
also
of
one in Tel Aviv or somewhere in Israel at one point?
that we did have several events in Tel Aviv. Unfortunately, it's been about a year since due to the situation in Israel right now. Hopefully, we can get that going again at some point in the future. But a lot of other different cities. I mean, you've come to Barcelona, and joined us there. We have a very good scene here in Berlin. We just recently had the first event in Belgium as well. We have Barcelona, awesome. Lisbon, Edinburgh, and actually several more are coming. So, but if you cannot make it to those events, that's a pity, and you should try. But if you cannot, we also have a podcast once a week. So, where very often we interview the past speakers and just chat about geospatial stuff. So
awesome. So if anyone wants to come to you proposing a new city, how easy is it to pitch that to you, or what are you looking for?
Well, it's very easy. What I'm looking for is, first of all, they should hopefully have the endurance to do at least 2 or 3 events, because I think the first one is the first one you get it going, and then hopefully the second and third one is when it gets a little momentum. So ideally, I want people who are going to do at least 2 or 3 events. Ideally, you should be somewhat well connected in that city into whatever the geospatial scene is there, and that's basically it. And then you need to find a venue. So we're very fortunate in London because we're able to have it at Geovation, which is the Ordnance Survey's co-working space, or at the university. So in many of the cities, we have it in different universities, which is a good match. So yeah, you need to find a venue, and then you need to find some sponsors who will, pay for the drinks. So,
Yeah.
and we can help with that a bit, but ideally you need to find some local people as well, some sponsors. So
Sure. Okay, that sounds great. I hope someone, in some far-flung place listens to this and their eyes light up with the idea of a new GeoMob. So
I do recommend it, man. You should travel. I mean, you've come to Barcelona, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it was just an enjoyable evening, and you get to meet some interesting people and who are also into geospatial stuff, and get to talk about geospatial stuff and unwind over a beer. We have Lisbon, we have Helsinki, Finland. So it's some cool places.
Yeah, it's my goal to go to all of them. So
we'll see I've not even been to all of them. I've not even. I have a few. I need to go to Edinburgh. Unfortunately, I have not yet made it to Edinburgh, but it's on the list.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Great, Ed. Once again, that was amazing. You're the biggest contributor really that I've come across to geospatial in so many ways around here. So I really appreciate your service.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, and keep up the good work. I've been enjoying listening.